It's about living in Chipping Norton, delightful old architecture.
Living near famous people who we don't really like.
It's a working market town. It's nothing like the Chipping Norton set.
If Chipping Norton were an animal, it would be a foxhound.
Going off for the fox hunt.
Mark Steele's in town.
Thanks very much. Welcome to Mark Steele's in Town, which this week comes from Chipping Norton in the Cotswolds. Or, to put it another way, bloody hell, I'm behind enemy lines tonight. Because for anyone who doesn't know, this is the home of the Chipping Norton set. That consists of everyday folk. Everyday folk such as the Prime Minister and his advisor and the ex-editor of The Sun and Jeremy Clarkson. I feel like that... so loved by the people that surround them. It also means that it's wonderfully peaceful here because of the Chipping Norton set. There's hardly any crime. In fact, if you ring 999, when they say, which service do you require, you can say, I'd like to borrow a horse, please, and they'll be round within minutes. This is the only place where I've done one of these shows where this has happened. When I got here, I went in the bookshop and the manager said, "Uh-oh, look who's here. Duck for cover, everybody." I would imagine there are probably vigilantes outside right now. How on earth did the BBC get past our border patrol? Let them in, we might as well hand the Wednesday market over to the North Koreans. Now, one way to find out what people are thinking here in Chipping Norton is, of course, to read the local paper. And you've got a very well-produced one here. It's called The Daily Telegraph. Only in Chipping Norton could the Co-op's request for a small extension be met with an official complaint on the council that this would unfairly benefit the Labour Party. That is to be admired, isn't it? What for? It's the shells of communist biscuits? This is how Bolshevik Russia started. Fits the rifle. And so Chipping Norton, or Chippy as it's known, has a certain image. For example, I received a series of messages on Twitter about the town before I came. Someone said, I applied to go to school in Chipping Norton but couldn't afford the £250,000 dinner money. And someone put, I worked there in the early 90s. The heir to the JCB fortune owns half the place. So it was full of massive tools then and still is. And it's not just political figures who live here. There's Alex James from Blur and there's Patrick Stewart and Ben Kingsley. I bet you're forever having conversations like, I see our new postman is Salman Rushdie. Guess who I bumped into at the laundrette? Hillary Clinton. But, of course, once you get to know the place, you realise this is unfair. There's 9,000 people live in Chipping Norton. You can't all stand around going, what a nightmare. We've been invited for supper at the Camerons on the same night that we're supposed to be at the Oscars. There is clearly a mix here. It's two places fused together in many ways. There are the people, for example, who start every sentence with, we've been here 5 generations. Would you like a biscuit, Sid? I've been here for 5 generations. I'll have a custard cream. And then there are the people who go, of course, we've converted the cowshed into a sun lounge. It was 4 years after moving up from London until the building was finished, but worth it, as the children will never have to see any poor people again. Of course, we did want Ocelot to go to the state school, but... we took one look at it and we just thought, oh my God, no. Now, something that lots of you seem very proud of is saying, this is the highest point in Oxfordshire. And that is pretty impressive, I'll grant you that, you know. People go on about Tibet, but Edmund Hillary never come here, did he? Never made it to the top of the Banbury Road, did he? Because he didn't have the bottle. Apparently the altitude makes it very windy here, people say. Now, I met Alan Brain, who runs the Railway Club, and he said, no, lots of people come out here to retire. Of course, it don't do them no good, as the wind kills them off after a year, don't it? Of course, there's no doubt it can look very twee in Middle England here. Everything's thatched and rustic and made of beautiful stone, including the public toilet. As if someone's gone, well, if we're going to have a public convenience, we must buy one on auction at Sotheby's. You must be the only town that if someone asks if you have cottaging in your public toilets, you say, yes, a delightful 13th century cottage effect. We're getting an auger for a hand dryer. But whether it's fair or not, as I say, I know it isn't, but the town is mostly known at the moment for this Chipping Norton set. Now, for people who aren't sure precisely who they are, a writer called Peter Oborne in the Daily Telegraph came up with a guide. He said, the Chipping Norton set are an incestuous collection of louche, affluent, power-hungry and amoral Londoners. And it's lovely of you all to come. Now, Dominic Sandbrook, the historian, who also lives here, replied that there are worse places than Chipping Norton up the road. And he wrote, you want louche, try Stow-on-the-Wold. Amoral, then go to Bourton-on-the-Water. And you don't know power-hungry until you've been to Moreton-on-the-Marsh. You can't argue with him. I've been to Moreton-on-the-Marsh. It's like living under the Daleks. In fact, the Chipping Norton News shows how tough life here can be. In the issue I saw, there's a headline, Town Hall Toilet Traumas. Chipping Norton Town councillors recently told tales of town hall toilets closing early, and if caught short, they have to use the fox. Imagine suffering. On the same page is another headline, bus crisis hits town, because there was a day when the school bus wasn't working. But luckily this was during the school holidays. There's just one tragedy after another here, isn't it? Oxfam do what they can, but there must be times when it just seems hopeless. Just £5 a month could prevent this councillor from having to use the toilets in the Fox. Another story says, a dozen Chipping Norton ramblers gathered at Bledington on a sunny afternoon, but heavy rain the week before meant the meadows were impassable to all but welly wearers. Please, please give all you can. Something that might not help you shake off the image of being just on the overprivileged side of the normal to posh axis is the marvellously down-to-earth attraction that is the Dalesford Organic Farm and Hostel, where you can feast on a locally sourced, no-chemicals crisp for as little as £700. But it's worth paying because it's so caring about the environment, with everything organic and local, including the people who go there, who've driven only 90 miles in a Range Rover, burning up no more than 2 oil fields to the mile. I rang the farm, and to their credit, they have a recorded message that I guess most farms do not have. For directions to the farm, press 1. For opening hours, press 2. For Pilates, yoga treatments and personal shopping, press 3. I bet the kids round here sing, Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and on that farm he had a holistic Mexican colonic irrigation mud farm. E-I-E-I-O. One review I saw went, I spent most of the time turning over price tags with amazement and fear. Tea towel, £30. Wellies, £60. 2 garden urns, £10,500. What I find hard in that situation when you're in a shop that's more expensive than you realise and you turn over a tag, it's hard to just act natural, isn't it? And go, oh, £10,500. when every bit of you wants to go, for a pair of poxy urns! Now, I went there today. I don't mean to sound ungracious, but I can't say I felt at home. You hear these voices in places like that are extraordinarily deep and unfeasibly self-assured, saying things like, yes, that'd be rather appetite in the circumstances. And you think, oh, it must be the Foreign Secretary or the head of the army or something. And you turn around and there's a bloke who's 19. They must be trained to speak like that from before they were born, like with their parents holding up little tapes to them in the womb, saying things like, one always wishes for clement weather on these occasions. So I bought 2 items that were the only things I could afford, and I'm going to give one away tonight. Now, I have here a cauliflower. That was £3. £3 for a... Now, the cauliflower will go to whoever can guess the price of a box of 6 Christmas crackers. Now, they normal Christmas crackers, I know, because I undid it and tipped the stuff out. And it said... Each cracker contains its own individual eco message. So 6 crackers, what do you reckon? Who said 40? Who said 40? The cauliflower is yours. But even more sinister than anything that might have gone on in Dalesford is the issue of the local rubbish tip. Because the tip was in the village of Dean, where the Prime Minister's house is, and Lord Chadlington also lives there, and he had complained about the tip. And now it's been closed. And now it's a 40-mile round trip, isn't it? Or even more, to the nearest tip. Now, to start with here, I can't help wondering what the rubbish tip at Dean was like. What are we going to do with these old Chippendale sideboards? There isn't time to take it to Sotheby's. Get the butler to sling it on the tip. Probably the only rubbish tip you could use for an episode of Antiques Roadshow. So there have been protests, placards and people chanting. So do people here support the protests? Yes. Maybe the most surprising side of the protest is that despite everything that gives it its image, Chipping Norton is... mostly a town of commoners with a radical history, so the protest over the tip fits in. Even now, I get the impression that you're not all entirely keen on the image that the Chipping Norton set gives the town. You'd be happy when they got... Revolution. It's what? It's what? So I think what happened there is someone said we should start the revolution, but then... And then when I said, do what? I thought, oh, I don't know. I had a full revolutionary spirit. I got a bit older and it's gone. This was a town. It is a town with a radical history. This was a town built from the wool trade. Wool was its main product. Its other main product seemed to be stroppiness. According to my book over there, The History of Chipping Norton, in 1693, the poor had no bread, so rioted, and a government report said, care will be taken to prevent these riots and punish the Chipping Norton offenders, who do it more out of lazy, pilfering habits than real want. And one red-haired resident described the events in her esteemed journal with... It's a corn trick! Cheating chippy chavs are having a loaf! The Industrial Revolution caused more protests. In 1830, agricultural workers smashed up threshing machines. There were individual protests as well, like the farmer mentioned in the book. It says, railway officials were explaining to him that the new railway would pass through his land, right where his biggest barn was. And according to this book, the old chap said, oh, no, it won't. I got enough to do as it is. Without having to open and shut my barn doors every time a train comes through. I really hope that's true. Oh, no, we're 10 minutes late, bloody Midland trains. Really, here it comes. So Chippy's image isn't the reality at all, it seems to me. It's a centre of urban angst and class struggle, Chipping Norton. There are probably hip-hop crews that make records like On the Streets of Chipping Norton, Life is Harsh, It Ain't Like Morton on the Marsh. Altogether, pretty Middle England Chippy has a finer collection of rebels and ruffians than almost anywhere. You even had someone called Captain James Hind, the gentleman highwayman. According to his biography there, for his first robbery, he held up a gentleman and his servants, taking £10 from them. Then he handed back £2 as it was a long way to London and he was a good-natured lad. It was like a Tesco club card. They take £200 off you and give you £1.50 back so that you can give it to them next time, and people go, oh, they're ever so generous. But in one way, Hind fits in round here perfectly, because you've got to have something about you here that's a bit unexpected to fit in. Behind the comfortable image, everything's slightly unpredictable. For example, there's this book. It goes this book of famous moments in Chippy. In 1990, Steven Spielberg made a film called Joe versus the Volcano, and this says, due to a mix-up with the Rank organisation distributing it, the world premiere took place in the Chipping Norton Theatre. Tom Hanks was in that. Are you sure, Stephen? Are you sure? This is the capital of England? Hattie Jakes lived here. Ronnie Barker had an antique shop here. Fairport Convention lived here. Patrick Stewart lives here. This isn't normal. Must be the only town where if you're having one of them discussions, like, what was that film Judi Dench was in with Kevin Spacey? Instead of going on Google, you go, Judy, what was that film you were in? And if she can't remember, she'll go, oh, I don't know. Kevin, what was that film we were in? Ben Kingsley is the patron of this theatre, isn't he? Oh, I know. I know. When you just meet him in the street, you have to go, morning, Sir Ben.
When he goes into the shop at Chavington, the butchers, they have to call him Sir Ben, because my son works in there, and that's the truth.
To some people, your most notable celebrities are stones. A circle of them called the Rollright Stones. They've been there for thousands of years, and it's brilliantly moody and muddy up there, and the stones have become a bit of a shrine for pagans and witches as well. So I read some of the accounts of people who've been there. There's this one called Down Came the Fog on the Rollright Stones website. It starts, I chuckle over some of the crazier theories of self-styled experts. So I thought, well, this would be a rational account. And it goes. The fog descended, blanking out the lights of nearby Chipping Norton. We called upon the spirits of place, personal ancestors, our goddesses and gods, and the raising of energy via chanting to awaken the stones and their energy paths. Unfortunately, one person was drunk and had to be removed. Rituals always seem to have one joker. Doesn't it make you sick when you're trying to wake up a stone and there's someone who won't take it seriously? Now, a truly antisocial event did happen when the stones were vandalised and paint was thrown over them. But how about this for chilling? According to the BBC News website, a spokesperson for the local witches said, if the power of magic and the power of prayer works, the people who have done this should start to feel very uncomfortable. Sounds like a pagan Tony Soprano. We're going to be chanting to wake up the summoner spirits, and make these vandals feel, a little bit uncomfortable, Somewhere in Chipping Norton right now, there's an earwig going, help me! Sorry about the paint. Whatever the stones are for, it is a splendid place to wander about up there in the cold, and one of the people responsible for preserving it is Dave Shirt, a trustee of the Stones. Now, this is this fascinated me when you were showing me round there. There are sort of pagan wedding ceremonies take place up there, is that right?
All very popular, yes. Get coach loads coming up from London to do that.
Did they go on a pagan stag night the night before? So you officiate in these pagan
Well, we
rituals,
have done sometimes, yeah. It's very strange. You just put on some robes, like you do, and then you get taken to the pub afterwards and get shown around like the vicar.
But thanks very much to Dave. Thank you very much. And that's, what the pagans do prove, I think, is that Chipping Norton is nowhere near as conformist as it might seem to be sometimes. It looks all Rotary Club and Neighbourhood Watch, but that's a cover for every type of maverick behaviour. Even your graffiti here isn't normal. It's made of wool. Because there's a woolen Banksy who leaves knitwear across the town in odd places and calls herself the yarn bomber. So one morning there'll suddenly be a tree wearing a jumper with the sleeves shaped with the branches, or woolen totem poles round lampposts. Now, I did ask the bomber to come on the show, but was told that they couldn't, as this would reveal their identity. Isn't that so brilliantly Chipping Norton? In most places, when someone doesn't want their identity revealed, it's because they've grassed up a gang or been undercover in the IRA. Here it's because they've left knitting on a railing. Now, in particular, this has caused problems for Claire, because Claire runs the knitting shop and has sometimes been assumed to be the yarn bomber. Is that right, Claire?
That's absolutely right, yes.
I think I can say fairly definitively that it isn't Claire and it isn't the wool shop. It is someone else who's the yarn bomber, but we mustn't reveal it. You think anybody knows?
I think maybe she often operates under cover of darkness.
Oh, it's a she. Oh. I'll tell you what, Claire, you've already ruined my theory because I thought it was Clarkson. Well, thanks very much to Claire. So what's the feeling with Jeremy Clarkson then? You fans? No. I found it's a bit sort of half and half, really, with him. But that suggests to me that it's a smart move for him living here, because if he lived anywhere else, he'd be the town arse. But with the sort of neighbours he's got here, he comes in about 9th. There is a musical history in Chipping Norton. This was where the studios were where Baker Street was recorded, and Albatross by Fleetwood Mac. Dexys recorded here. But even this heritage isn't all law-abiding, because the Crown and Cushion Hotel was owned by Keith Moon of The Who. For anyone unfamiliar with the ways of Keith Moon and hotels, this is one part of his biography. Moon used dynamite, his explosive of choice, to destroy hotels. All that porcelain flying through the air was quite unforgettable, Moon recalled. I never realised dynamite was so powerful. So the Crown and Cushion, which looks like a typical genteel hotel, has a website that starts, "The Crown and Cushion is a proud 40-bedroom hotel, once owned by the legendary drummer Keith Moon, and his legacy of decadence lives on today." What, in the hotel? The people on TripAdvisor go, "We had a lovely weekend at the Crown and Cushion. The food was very nice, and in the evening, Derek set fire to the bed. Later on, we choked on our own vomit, and the view was lovely." But in its way, this is a symbol of Chipping Norton, isn't it? That on the one hand, it's got this image of modern aristocratic manners and wealth and power, but most of you had nothing to do with that, as illustrated by the Chipping Norton News with its handy initial CNN. I wonder if any people do get it wrong. Oh, then most of the news in America seems to concern a bus that wasn't working on a day it wasn't needed anyway. Breaking news this hour. Wellies needed for Ramble. Now, at this point, I'd like to introduce a member of the editorial team, Keith, for the Chipping Norton News. You did actually make an offer to Rebecca at one point.
We did. We ended up writing an open letter to The Guardian when the hacking scandal broke, offering Rebecca a job. I mean, it's...
On the Chipping Norton
Yeah,
News.
absolutely right. We have all kinds of strange people on the team, so I don't think... The offer to Rebecca was... come and work as a junior reporter. We'll give you the notepad and the pencil. You can go and report on the cemetery clear-up and the blanket testing day.
And work her way up.
And work her way up. But we haven't had a
what a
reply
shame.
yet, but she's very welcome.
All right, well, early days, and let's hope she comes round. Thanks very much to Keith. I think you had a lucky break, to be honest, because if she'd agreed and then resigned, you'd have to cough up 11 million quid. And I think Chippy is better, clearly, than its reputation, because it appears to be cutesy Middle England, a town made entirely by a mixture of Cotswold stone and homemade chutney, with everybody here part of the Chipping Norton set. So if burglars had any sense, they'd come here on the night of the BAFTAs and the place would be empty. But, of course, most of it isn't like that. And there'll always, I think, be under the surface in Chipping Norton a rumbling disquiet and stroppiness which is more charming even than the pretty high street. And it's December as we're recording this, and the whole show has been recorded on the set of a pantomime. And so I think it's fitting to end this programme, and indeed this series, with part of the first ever pantomime that was ever performed in the town. And the theatre has kindly allowed me to read a part of that pantomime out. "Jack, what took you so long?" said Jack's mum. "Oh, Mother, you'll be so pleased with me," said Jack. "I sold the cow and everything we own, plus £10,000 in return for these 2 magic organic beans." "From the Enchanted Kingdom at Dalesford." Jack went off to seek his fortune and came across a magical golden palace. "What is this place?" asked Jack. "Why," said a stranger, "it's the public toilet." "You'd better hurry up or you'll have to go in the Fox." "As this is a pantomime," said Jack, "shouldn't I be travelling with the pantomime horse?" "I'm afraid we're one short at the moment," said the policeman. "But the princess has promised she'll give it back by Monday." "Oh, well," said Jack, "I've travelled the length and breadth of the land and ended up in Chipping Norton, a place where everyone in the town is delighted to be thought of as part of the wonderful world of the Chipping Norton set. Isn't that right, boys and girls?" "Oh, yes, it is!" "Oh, well, hope you all live happily ever after, boys and girls. Bye-bye."
Mark Steele's In Town was written and performed by Mark Steele with additional material by Peter Sinclair. The producer was Sam Bryant.